I don't want to cut you off, Graham, but that sort of issue of advocacy and is what you're sort of talking about to some extent too, Amanda, whether it be by building or by promotion, is probably something that Geoffrey London will talk about at perhaps one scale up in terms of the role of government in order to build, and to some extent it's about confidence, I guess, and belief, that you believe that people will actually do what they say they're going to do. Anyway, with that interruption, I'd like to thank Graham and the panel, and we'll have a bit of a break, as it says in the program, till 4:30, where we'll reconvene. So thank you. I'll just wait for a few people to find their seats. I'd now like to introduce Professor Geoffrey London, who is the keynote speaker for this occasion today. We've now been joined, I think, by some additional people who have joined us, so I'd like to say welcome to them. We think it's of note that Professor London is here. We think it is important to be able to describe his role and his ability to influence what happens in the cities he's been involved in to a broader range of people than are here today, than are simply here today. So we've been joined by some people to hear this speech, this discussion, and we welcome you. Professor Geoffrey London has an impressive career in architecture. He is the Victorian Government Architect. He also holds the position of Professorial Fellow at the University of Melbourne. Before his current role, he was West Australian Government Architect for 4 years, and also Professor of Architecture at the University of Western Australia. He is also a past Dean of the Faculty and a Head of School. Professor London is a past Chair of the Committee of Heads of Architecture Schools of Australasia, and is a past President of the West Australian chapter of the Royal Institute of Australian Architects. And he is a Fellow of that organisation. In practice, he has acted as a consultant on numerous architectural and urban design projects, and served on and acted as chair of many architectural design award juries and a large number of competition juries. And he has made the time and has the time to be here today. So thank you. Professor London.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you for the opportunity to come down here to New Zealand and talk with you about some of my experiences. Right, let's make sure the technology works. What I'm really going to talk about today is good design and government, and I tend not to differentiate easily between architecture, urban design and landscape architecture, but we really deal with good design and the built environment. And that's our mandate in the Office of the Victorian Government Architect. And I'll run you quickly through some of the roles that we have, and I'm not going to read any of these out, you'll be pleased to hear. They're simply there as an indication of some of the things that we do get up to. But advocacy is a major element of what we do, and it's really giving a voice for good design in government, acting as a champion, a point of reference when design issues surface. We're also advisory, and we do advise across the whole of the Victorian government. We consult with all government departments that are doing major or strategic projects, and we talk through the whole gamut of issues that relate to procuring a building and how that might work with good design. We also work increasingly with local government. Local government has been coming to us and asking how they might improve the quality of work that they're receiving for development applications. What kind of strategies can they put in place? And we're advising on that basis. We're advising on a number of competitions within the private sector, and just recently we had a request from one of Melbourne's biggest developers to come in and act as a design review team for them in one of the major city-forming projects that they're developing now. A recurring question we get is what is good design, and too often good design is misunderstood. It's often misrepresented as something you can peel on and off an environment, something that is there for the value managers to remove when costs get a little too high. We argue consistently that good design underscores every decision that is made about the built environment. It's not a luxury. It pays itself back many times over in terms of economics, in terms of safety, in terms of whole-of-life costs, and in terms of delight in use. As this slide suggests, much of the work we do is reactive. We react to requests that we get, and that takes up a large amount of our time. The office is not large. There are 8 of us in total, and 2 of us are only fractional appointments, me being one of those. I retain my involvement with the university. And I think it's important to have another arm in this role because it gives you a degree of independence and a capacity to be a little more outspoken than you might otherwise feel you can be if you're fully within the employ of government. We also have a number of projects of our own that we initiate, and they're listed there. We have a series of good design publications. They're shown on the next few slides, and I'll run through those shortly. And these are essentially directed towards the public and other government agencies. They're not necessarily directed towards architects, urban designers or landscape architects. Much of the material in them is relatively simply argued. We don't go into complex issues. It's there as a poster, really, that can be on a wall and remind people of the virtues of good design. We are developing a book on recent Victorian architecture post-millennium. Part of the reason for this is to demonstrate that government is committed to this part of the culture of Victoria, that it is willing to put its stamp on the production of this very fine work that's come out of Victoria since year 2000. We are developing a policy on architecture, and we did recently get approval from the Department of Premier and Cabinet, which is where my office is located, to do so, and they're offering us full support on that. We debated whether it was better to go for an overarching policy that attempted to bring a whole range of things together under one umbrella, or whether it was better to try and infiltrate a couple of other or a number of different areas to ensure better design outcomes. We look closely at procurement strategies. The nature of procurement of buildings, as you'd all know, can profoundly affect the quality of the architecture that's produced. We argue that whilst PPPs can be extremely problematic in terms of maintaining design quality throughout the project, there are strategies that can be put in place to ensure that you do get a good design outcome. And we've been doing that with PPPs, design, construct and other methods. And we're now exploring with major projects in Victoria an alliance project which we'll be documenting closely to test its outcomes. We do run a number of design workshops on strategic projects as they come up, where we get a number of key design people together with the client agencies, and run through all the issues so that everyone becomes familiar with the range of possibilities that might exist on a project. We're pursuing demonstration projects. There's already been some discussion about the virtue of demonstration, and like you, we have exactly the same problem with winning hearts and minds when it comes to higher density housing. So our office is coordinating the work of 3 other government agencies and one of the universities in Melbourne to develop what we call, with the acronym of DASH. It's a development for affordable and sustainable higher density housing. And we have a good site in an activity centre, close to a railway station, close to a shopping centre and near a freeway, facing north. And we're developing that with a project which will explore a number of different strategies. It'll explore modes of delivery that might be able to ensure that we're able to deliver medium density housing at a rate that starts getting a little closer to that of the cottage industry based project housing marketplace.